I am Jose MENDEZ, Executive Director and Founder of the International Christian Committee for Defense of Rights of Victims registered in Washington D.C. I'm about to tell you about the twisted, selective justice that for literally 30 years didn't grant me due process of law. The mission of the U.S. Department of Justice is precisely to honor the rule of law, the separation of state power, and to grant, according to the Constitution and established jurisprudence and international covenant, declarations and treaties, due process of law, human rights, civil rights, immigration rights, labor rights. But what you are about to see in a chronological fashion is evidence of the differential treatment, of the twisted selective justice that was applied to me when institutions like the FBI didn't find jurisdiction to honor due process in my life that have injured me and my family for in the order of 3 decades. In the early 1970s, I went with dreams to the former Soviet Union to get my engineering degree in energy and my Master of Science in nuclear power plants. In that process, I had great achievements in the academic area, but also in the extra academic activities. And here you can see me with the former president of Venezuela, Rafael Caldera, in Moscow, who was 2 times president of Venezuela. And here you can see me here with former President Carlos Andrés Pérez, who was also 2 times president of Venezuela. I finished my bachelor degree in energy and my master of nuclear power plants summa cum laude. And to testify about that, after I came back to Venezuela, after my graduation in June 1980, I was able to work for a power company in Venezuela and for a Venezuelan consulting engineering company. And together we had a bid that we won, together with a very well-established international consulting company, Combustion Engineering. And I was sent to Boonton, New Jersey to develop the engineering design of this project, applied to the design of a refinery to deal with the greatest reserves of heavy crude oil on planet Earth, that today, considering a potential recovery factor of 40%, we are talking about 600,000 million barrels of proven reserves at that rate. Currently, we consider 20%, which is 300,000 million barrels of oil per day. This is important because in that process, in 1983, in Frankfurt, I decided, instead of continuing my consulting company, to start my doctoral degree. And here is the letter, dated July 2, 1984, issued on letterhead of the George Washington University, approving me to further study in my doctoral degree and get my doctoral degree, and with the request of doing this in 2 phases. In one, I needed to approve 38 credit units, and in the other phase was to develop an original research using state-of-the-art techniques, technologies, explorations, mathematical explorations that was worth to get a doctoral degree. It's in that context that in the spring of 1988, almost 4 years after, I did approve not the equivalent to 38 but to 120 credit units, which is in the letter, in the record of the George Washington University, and this is a statement proven on letterhead of the George Washington University. And to be able to do that, I got scholarships, financial supports, credits to pay the equivalent if I include into this period, which is the fall of 1984 till the date of my doctoral defense, November 23, 1992, in the order, considering the cost, the opportunity cost of the monies I didn't get to be in my doctoral degree, and considering my salary as an international consultant at the World Bank at the rate of $350 net of taxes, in the order of $1,400,000 that I lost trying to have this opportunity. Now, on April 21st, 1988, the School of Engineering and Applied Science, Department of Civil, Mechanical and Environmental Engineering produced this letter on letterhead of the university dated April 21st, 1988, where Dr. Raymond Fox, professor and chairman of the Department of Civil, Mechanical and Environmental Engineering, said, "I am pleased to inform you that you have successfully passed the doctoral qualifying examination. This document will appear on the screen." To testify about this, on or about November 23, 1992, after 4.5 years after the university issued my doctoral qualifying examination, I presented, after 4 years and 7 months, and after the author of this research presented regular reports on the weekly meetings of the Proportional Research Group that I coordinated, including the NASA Hopeless Thrust Augmentation Projects of the School of Engineering of the George Washington University, where we worked in improving the efficiency, the performance of rockets for NASA. And it's in that context that Dr. Jose MENDEZ, member of that doctoral committee, testified on the fact that this was a successful defense. Here, by request of the group of lawyers that I needed to proceed to this lawsuit entitled Jose MENDEZ versus the George Washington University, statement on the record, under oath, on or about August 1st, 1994, Dr. Jose MENDEZ testified, and I quote, at page 11 of that testimony, "Prior to the defense, my lawyers Christopher Tisi and Sidney Chupat asked, prior to the defense, did you have occasion to actually review his research? Yes, of course. It's a standard protocol that to be able to go to a defense, many drafts during many months were produced until the final draft was good enough to proceed towards the oral defense of this research." And at page 12, it is important to stress on the fact that this question was made. And all of this was done prior to the actual defense, and Dr. Torabi answered, prior to the defense. And then, question, of the 200 or so committees that you have been involved in, how would you rate Mr. MENDEZ work in your experience? Quote, "I think his paper is one of the best." Not only he said that, but he wrote by his own initiative to several institutions related to Nobel Prize winners, like the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center, because this research entitled Engineering Applications of, you can see that on the screen, Engineering Applications of Nonlinear Dynamic Chaos Theory, applied to 3 different areas of fields of engineering, including digitalization of biomedical signals, electrocardiograms, digitalization of fluid mechanics signals, drip and faucet experiment, and mathematical simulation of time series regarding data collected in the energy sector of the stock market. And this is the testimony that Dr. Torabi recommended the implications of this research, the recommendations for further research, including to the Ilya Prigozhin Center for Studies in Statistical Mechanics and Complex Systems of the University of Texas at Austin, and this was delivered to Dr. Torabi and directed to Ping Chen. Part of this effort directed to that center that honored Nobel Prize winners Ilya Prigozhin. It is interesting to state that as a standard protocol, 7 recommendations were given to improve the quality of the latest version of this research. 7 semantic comments were made and were addressed fully by my person in the spring of 1993. But something dramatic was happening. Juan David Tamayo, a criminal, came to the office of President Stephen Joel Trachtenberg on or about November 22, 1993, where he said, among other things, that he was bringing some diskettes containing some examples of how Mr. Mendez took some of his own very points from actual data, and then he was just stating that what the doctoral committee saw for 4 years and 7 months was not good. Was not good. They didn't have the mind, the preparation to appraise the authenticity of my doctoral research, or even to be present and see my defense to each one of the questions in a drafted version of my doctoral research. But his crimes, Juan David Tamayo, were approved at the highest level of the university. I was never informed about this accusation. I was never granted due process of law, and this man started executing crimes. This is the man who started threatening to kill members of my doctoral committee. He also went to the World Bank and started to threaten members of the directors and managers to whom I was reporting as a consultant to the World Bank, and this man was giving green light. I have all the communications in the order of 300 defendant exhibits that the university produced, mostly, where I could state that this man, after all of this happened, I went to the FBI, talked to the assigned agent, Mrs. Molly Flynn, and showed, for instance, this letter. This is a critical letter dated August 18, 1993, where the criminal that was taken as an expert to the office of the president of the university and the dean of the School of Engineering, and everybody that was using him to come against me to neutralize the effects of his crimes. And the FBI knows this, Department of Justice knows this, the office of the USA Attorney General knows about this, was requesting pornographic literature, faking my signature, is on the screen. And this is the reason why, when a person is not granted due process of law, this type of things can happen. As a consequence of this, I didn't have other option, after trying in good faith to talk to the authorities of the George Washington University at the very office of Stephen Joel Trachtenberg, than to sue the university. And of course, Ashton Van Gerel said, we will take the case on contingency fee if you demonstrate that you have grounds. They interrogated on the road Dr. Jose MENDEZ. They went with me to the FBI and testified that the FBI knew perfectly, and upon due diligence should have known, that the criminal was the very person that became even witness number 1 with his sister-in-law Tamara Rios, witness number 2 in the lawsuit that I had against the university. It was in this condition that the university, when requested to produce what document they used during my doctoral defense, and the George Washington University top management produced the crime. This is a fraudulent document produced by one of the leading universities in the Washington D.C. metropolitan area. I can read it, you can see on the screen, and it's available upon request. This is a document that the university produced when we submitted our complaint at the D.C. Superior Court on December 2, 1994, and it says, Doctor of Science Qualifying Examination, dated November 23rd, 1992. And it was supposed, with the committee, Dr. James Fair, Dr. Mohammed Haq, Dr. Robert Goulart, Dr. Hose MENDEZ, and according to the testimony of the George Washington police, all of them, including Dr. Jose MENDEZ, who testified on my favor, were threatened by Juan David Tamayo to be, and the university knows this. This is a fraudulent document, And this is a crime that does not prescribe with time. Now, 100 years from now, 700 years from now, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, or the children of my children will have the right to bring this crime to light and to be able to be compensated for the injuries that today, 1992 to 2022, is in the order of 30 years of sufferings, of injuries that were not necessary. And when we ask what was the real form that was produced, the university, via Mrs. Coles, produced the form. This was the real form that the university, according to Mr. Demetsky, that was GW counsel, mistakenly prepared. This was the one that was produced, but this was the real form that the university hid. Where is president of the George Washington University? Where is dean of the School of Engineering? Where is chairman of the Department of Civil, Mechanical and Environmental Engineering? Where is the form? Because this is shame on you, historic shame. Thousands of students come to your premises every year and you need to produce an answer. What is the answer? On behalf of my family, what is the answer? Because what came about is that we have enough information about the many exhibits that the university produced during my lawsuit, including the communications of the dean of the School of Engineering with Juan David Tamayo, including the fact that after I decided to sue the university decided to contract outside expertise to see whether my research that I defended was original or not. Shame on the George Washington University, but shame on the FBI, shame on the Inspector General of the Department of Justice that knew and upon due diligence should have known about these crimes. That's why, for instance, the Hispanic newspaper on Friday, October 13 produced this interesting document, a publication entitled Jose Mendez versus the George Washington University. You can see that on the screen. Academic excellence or criminal conspiracy. This is what happens when due process of law is not granted. So it's in these conditions, after many pleadings, after producing the complaint, the request for production of documents and the request for production of interrogatories, after in the order of 12 witnesses of the university top management were interrogated, that the School of Law and the representatives of the university, the councils of the university, were able to trade off and negotiations with the DC Superior Court, and voila, one page, very bad written by the University Council, was a summary judgment that testified to the fact that I never had a day in court. No jury was able to see the fraud, the crimes of the university, because of the imbalance of powers and the resources against me. And what happened? That during the proceedings of the university and the starting of my appeal at the DC Court of Appeals, my wife and my two children were coming to church on Sunday, May 4th, 1997, and they were killed by a very strange, bizarre fire truck hitting my car in the presence of witnesses number 1 and number 2 of the George Washington University. Here you can see the price I paid because of the lack of due process from the university and because of the willingness of the FBI to find jurisdiction and produce the interrogatories that they made on Juan David Tamayo, on Tamara Rios, and every person that was connected to the scene of the accident. Here it is, for instance, something I am not compelled to do. I am not supposed to do a criminal investigation for the FBI or for the Attorney General office, and I did. And voila, here at the scene of the accident, centimeters from the body, the dead body of my wife, here it is. The sister-in-law of Juan David Tamayo at the scene of the accident. She was not police, she was not fire department, she was not medical personnel. She was not supposed to be there. And the very scene of the accident, the chain of custody was contaminated with witnesses of the George Washington University. Now, the university probably might have said, you know, I I didn't know what this man was all about. I didn't know that he was a criminal. I didn't grant due process because I had good faith that this man was to be trusted. But this is my price. This is my minor son, days before he was killed, Daniel Jose Mendez, 4.5 years old. Who is going to pay for the damages? Who is going to pay for the injuries? My son was not on sale. Well, my soul was not on sale. My family was not on sale. This is what happens when a university allows this type of crimes without granting due process of law according to the internal procedures and protocols. When the FBI is going to find jurisdiction, they didn't find jurisdiction, but then they found jurisdiction to persecute me, to push me, to try to, I don't know, to destroy me and my family. 30 years of crimes persistently executed against me. This is my former wife, Rosemary Arancibia de Mendez. She was killed instantly. What is her price? Top management of the university. Now, the new president of the George Washington University. What is the price of my wife? What is the money you're going to pay for her? Because she was not on sale. She was 28 years old and she was killed because this nightmare was supposed to be stopped by just granting due process of law on GW University campus. But it's not enough. The report produced, State of Maryland Motor Vehicle Report, testified about the fact that the chain of custody of evidence was totally contaminated. And for instance, you know, there are so many mistakes. One of them is that the fire truck was coming at 45 miles per hour. We testified, measuring, making simulations of the fire truck and measuring the friction coefficient and measuring the skid marks that it was coming at 95 miles per hour. And much more than that, too many mistakes, intentionally or not made, too many errors. And more than that, this is the report produced by American Medical Laboratories located in Chantilly, Virginia, 703-802-7900, 852-9528, and the blood and the urine of the driver connected with Juan David Tamayo, Mark Smith, Social Security number 072607693, and this document was altered. This is a fraud because if you see step number 5, you can see that in the screen. Here is a question which is so critical. Was the seal of the urine and sample box when it came that was supposed to be preserved, and the chain of custody so sacred when you have 2 people dead and 1 injured, was it sealed intact? No, it was not intact. It could have been urine of anything, of any animals. This is a fraud. American Medical Laboratories. Somebody needs to find jurisdiction. Now, 100 years from now, this is a fraud. I have 2 people dead. Now, in addition to that, this person that we understand is connected with Juan David Tamayo had another accident a year before, meters from the scene of the accident where my family was killed. But was not only that. My son, Daniel Jose Mendez, was brought to the hospital without collar protection in violation of procedures. In addition to that, the record of my son who survived, who is today an officer of the U.S. Armed Forces, they lost his record. It says, we regret to inform you that at the present time we are unable to locate the emergency room record related to your son Emmanuel Mendez, Dimension Health Care System of Prince George Hospital. The whole thing was so bizarre. In these conditions, I had a meeting with representative of Latino Civil Rights Task Force who said the main speaker of this year is the Honorable Janet Reno. I was very close to Janet Reno that day, June 25, 1998, and I delivered to her. You can see that on the screen, this package of 1,400 pages with all the research, the criminal investigation, and the evidence, compelling evidence. The evidence speaks by itself. when I delivered this package to her, entitled Request for Further Prosecution in the Matters Cross-Connecting the Scene of the Accident where Rosemary and Daniel Mendez, my wife and son, were killed in the real-time presence of adverse witnesses, collaborators of the George Washington University in the pending lawsuit Jose Mendez versus the George Washington University. Who is going to pay for this crime? Sooner or later, that must be resolved in good faith. Now, almost 2 years after this letter, I hand-delivered it. By the way, the Secret Service jumped, and I hand-delivered it to the head of the Secret Service when the Honorable Janet Rano said, he's with us, just deliver the package. On May 18, you can see that on the screen, on letterhead of the FBI, on May 18, 2000, this letter was produced to me by Mike Harrison, Chief of Hate Crime Unit, Criminal Investigation Division, and which stressed, I quote, Dear Mr. Mendez, I am writing in response to your correspondence addressed to Attorney General Janet Reno that you forwarded to FBI headquarters for review. Based on the information you have provided at this time, there is no federal violation within our jurisdiction. Therefore, the FBI can take no action regarding this matter. The lady who is at the scene of the accident came from Virginia, crossed the D.C. state lines, and went to Maryland state line. There is jurisdiction of the FBI, and the FBI, and the U.S. Department of Justice, and the U.S. Inspector General of the Department of Justice didn't find jurisdiction because something stinks when due process of law is not granted. So, it's in these conditions that I continue to fight, and I decided that I will not rest, and I am asking my Creator not to close my eyes before justice is executed. Because in these conditions, I was promulgating immigration proposals for undocumented workers, not illegal workers, undocumented workers. And on July 2003, I went with Congressman Luis Gutierrez, and we manifested our support for this immigration proposal, HR 440. And it's in these conditions that I said loud and clear that we were asking for 1 million calls to the White House and for 1 million letters to President Bush in support of HR 440. In this process, I was invited to the White House by Karl Rove, the assistant of President George Bush 43 for his re-election campaign. In this process, I met many times with Bill Fritz, the chief of the U.S. Senate, and I went to the White House in a meeting on September 12, 2004, which is in the record of the White House, because you can search for that. But the evidence speaks by itself. On January 7, 2004, I went to the White House and I brought with me probably 40% of the people that were there, 77 of 2000, no, 1/3 of the people. 77 of the 230 people that were there that helped us collected more than 4,500,000 letters. And the implications of this was very important because we were looking for documentation for the order of 12 million families, mostly 97% Latinos. And on that occasion, Mr. Bush, for his re-election campaign, had this proposal for immigration support conference. Here you can see Colin Powell and other people that were close to this administration. And here I am with the white jacket, and you can see that on the screen, evidence available upon request. On that same day, for the third time, I met John Ashcroft. Here I am, is on my right, over there is on your left, with John Ashcroft. And this is his letter following our meeting, stating, Dr. Jose Mendez, dear Dr. Mendez, it was good to see you at the White House immigration event last week. Best wishes, John Ashcroft. Is on the record. And I promised 1 million letters, but 5 days after the meeting at the White House, my third meeting there, I appeared on this newspaper Hechos, 500,000 exemplars, with Congressman Luis Gutierrez stating, Republican Luis Gutierrez and the proposal HR 440 for the legalization of undocumented workers. And there to the right, Jose MENDEZ is asking to mobilize the country from coast to coast in pro of legalizing undocumented immigrants. 4.5 million letters. The evidence speaks by itself. Here is Congressman Luis Gutierrez, to my right, to your left, and the letters. The evidence speaks by itself. This is the reason of the persecution. This is the reason that we were talking about producing documentation for the order of 48 million undocumented workers, undocumented families. This is the reason why the FBI did find jurisdiction to persecute me. This is the reason why the FBI did find reasons to persecute me without mercy. This is the reason that the FBI, Department of Justice, and every person involved, something which is in the record of the White House. And here I am, giving the press conference on that glorious day, January 12, 2004, and here you have CNN, and here you have Azteca, Telemundo, Univision, all most Latino networks producing evidence to the fact that we found enough support in the 50 states for this proposal for immigration. In this condition, the persecution of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, of the Bureau of Citizenship and Immigration Services, Department of Justice, forced me to sue. And I came to the United States District Court, Eastern District Court of Virginia, on April 5th, 2004, and civil action 104CV 387A, Jose MENDEZ and Emmanuel MENDEZ versus the United States Federal Bureau of Investigation, served Robert Mueller, Director of FBI. Here it is. I produced this complaint, not being a lawyer, as a representative of the National Committee then, now it's International Committee, Christian Committee for Defense of Rights of Victims, requesting with extreme detail the production of documents and requesting the interrogatories of critical people. Too much detail, so much detail that 37 days after, the FBI and Department of Justice found a way to make a petition for order of protection. They were saying that the super powerful state, the United States, needed to be protected from me and from my lawsuit. They did find jurisdiction. And so 38 days after my suit, they countersue me in the criminal action number 04215A, accusing me of thousands of crimes because they did find jurisdiction. But they didn't know one thing. Sooner or later, things will come to light. And there was an ongoing petition and an ongoing lawsuit entitled Mexico versus the United States, where the International Court of Justice, of which the United States as a state was an active member, found violations of Article 36 of the Vienna Convention on Consular Relations. And I was never granted the benefits of this Article 36, and it was violated because not only the people of the U.S. government, Department of Justice and the FBI and the Bureau of Citizenship and Immigration Services never informed me as demanded by the International Court of Justice without delay of my rights to seek consular protections, consular legal protections, and therefore the entire process is contaminated from the beginning to the end. As a matter of fact, on February 18, 2008, date in which the United States was still active in this process, President Bush 43 found jurisdiction to grant these citizens of Mexico, as were granted rights to, in the case of Germany versus the United States, to grant them the benefits of the Vienna Convention on Consular Relations. It was never granted to me. Therefore, my petition today, as I have reflected it in different communications, including my letter to President Bush 43 on November 14, 2005, where I state, respectful request for acknowledgement of the United States violation of Article 36 of the Vienna Convention regarding the countersuit entitled the United States of America. Under this condition, my petition is, as a matter of international law, as a matter of international jurisprudence, as a matter of the International Declaration on Human Rights of the United Nations, as a matter of the Declaration on American Rights, executed by the Organization of American States, that I must be granted restitution in integro, which is to bring me, as a matter of law, to the status quo ante before this countersuit was executed against me. All these countersuit entitled the United States versus Jose Mendez must be dismissed. But they didn't do that. Instead of that, they did a petition to dismiss my entire case, and the adjudicated judge, the judge did find the jurisdiction, and he eliminated my lawsuit, Jose Mendez versus the United States. Not only that, but they made a motion in limine in order to demand that the jury associated with this criminal action against me will never know about all the facts, about the implied laws, about the legal interpretation of the facts that I brought because of the cover-up of the United States Federal Bureau of Investigation and Department of Justice, and they said none of the facts that I brought, my people there, the cover-up, the lack of due process of law, that was not supposed to be known by the jury because they didn't find jurisdiction. I have brought these issues to the highest level on planet Earth. I have come to the office of the High Commissioner on Human Rights of United Nations, and this matter is on the record. I have spoken with different representatives of the United States government, including this man, Glyn Davis, ambassador of the United States to international organizations in Vienna. And I met with him, and this is dated, it was September 18, 2009. I brought the issues to him, not only the issues of my request for protections, my request that the U.S. will acknowledge the violation of Article 36 of the Vienna Convention, but also denouncing the many crimes of the Venezuelan regime against Venezuelan citizens. But more than that, I also brought these issues to the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, and I brought all the material facts that were reflected in my lawsuit against the United States government in a lawsuit to the attention of the Inter-American Commission of the Organization of American States, and this is the acknowledgement of the Executive Secretary dated January 17, 2006, in a lawsuit, Jose Mendez versus the United States, that was established as case P2206. It's on the record. It's an internal document, but you can find this, and I have all well documented. Every documentation, every communication with the Inter-American Commission is very well documented. And more than that, I have the draft that was produced to the White House during the package that was sent on November 14, 2005, of the potential conceivable lawsuit before the International Court of Justice when the democratic institutions of Venezuela will be established. My children's children, 100, 700 years from now, will be able to address these issues because these are crimes that we have mentioned that do not prescribe with time. I am so sorry. I had communications with the president of the George Washington University this is one of his original communications to me when I invited him to different conferences that I made at the School of Engineering premises regarding international issues. I want to close with this. The Lord Jesus that I preach said in Matthew 16 and 18, the gates of hell shall not prevail. The gates of hell shall not prevail in my life, in my family, in our destinies. And the Bible says in Hebrews 4 and 13, and there is nothing created that will not be manifested, but everything is naked and bare before of the eyes of the one to whom we are accountable. Shame on the top management of the George Washington University for fabricating this document. Shame because you never granted to me due process of law. Shame because you brought these issues to the police even before informing me about these facts. Shame because in real life you were co-participant with Juan David Tamayo and his criminals of the blood shed by my family. The Bible said that God confronted the first assassin, the first criminal of humankind. Cain is reported on Genesis 4 and 10. And he said, where is your brother? And the arrogant said, I am not the keeper of my brother. And the mighty creator of the universe said, the voice of the blood of your brother Abel is crying for justice from the ground. Listen to this. U.S. Department of Justice, Attorney General of the United States. Now I am writing a letter of the same context to President Joe Biden, who said many times that to lose a son as he has lost his former wife and son is like to lose part of yourself. The voice of the blood of my former wife, Rosemary Arancibia Mendez, and the voice of the blood of my son, Daniel Jose Mendez, is crying for justice from the ground. I have peace, not the peace of this world, but the peace of the Prince of Peace. You can call me whatever, but the evidence speaks by itself. Justice delayed, justice denied. Amen.